Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you are new. Thank you for taking time out of your day to check the video out. We have more PlayStation news, rumors, and leaks to go over and cover here today. So before we dive into these topics, do me a favor, if you end up enjoying this video or finding it informative, be sure to leave it a like. And if you are new here to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well. The first topic we're covering talks about a new update for Resident Evil 4 Remake. This update has seemingly corrected the lower image quality and performance on PlayStation 5, but has seemingly lowered the image quality and performance on the Xbox Series version, which is kind of strange. So when it comes to the PS5 version, this is something that I pointed out when talking about this game. It seemed like the image quality was a little bit blurrier than it should be. It seemed like it wasn't able to really kind of hit that visual clarity that you would expect on a PS5 version. And so it's nice to see that that has been corrected, but apparently users on Xbox side of things are reporting that their image quality has actually been reduced somewhat, or the performance has been reduced. And so we'll have to see if Capcom addresses that or not. But on the Xbox version, the dead zone issue was apparently corrected. It's not perfect, but it has been improved, so I'd say that's definitely helpful. But yeah, if you're on the PS5 and you're playing Resident Evil 4 Remake, this patch now fixes the image quality issue. So let me know if you've been playing it. Moving on to the next topic, we're talking about Gran Turismo 7's 120 FPS update and how Digital Foundry is claiming this is pretty much a game changer. This is being reported by Push Square. They say, in case you missed it, the latest game update for GT7 introduced a handful of new visual options that let you really crank up the frame rate on PS5. With the new patch installed, the driving game now supports 120 frames per second as well as VRR, letting you push performance beyond the traditional 60 FPS. But how are these new options? According to Digital Foundry, they're really good. Ignoring VRR for a second, the 120Hz resolution mode and frame rate mode both offer near-locked 120 FPS during races, although there are performance dips during replays and possibly in menus. However, for the actual racing gameplay, it's pretty much spot on. Of course, both modes sacrifice a 4K resolution. The resolution mode goes down to 1440p, while the frame rate mode hits 1260p. If you turn on VRR in the PS5 settings, these modes behave somewhat differently. The frame rate mode, combined with VRR, raises the resolution to 1440p, with almost no noticeable sacrifice to the frame rate. Meanwhile, the resolution mode with VRR manages to output at 4K, but the frame rate stoops below the magic 120 FPS, fluctuating between 70 and 100 FPS during gameplay, according to Digital Foundry. So, yeah, if you did watch this analysis from Digital Foundry, they are calling it a game changer and saying that it really does dramatically improve the overall experience with this game. So I'm curious, let me know if you're somebody who's still playing GT7, if you have a compatible display that lets you play at 120 FPS, maybe even with VRR enabled. What has it been like for you? I'll be curious to see what you have to say. Moving on from that, we have potentially more bad news for PlayStation VR 2. There's a new report that claims Sony has cut production by 20%. PlayStation Lifestyle reports Sony has reduced its PSVR 2 production by 20%, according to Min-Chi Q, a tech insider primarily known for his analysis and projections for future Apple products. This counters a prior statement from Sony in January, where it denied reports that it had cut production numbers to the headset due to middling pre-order figures. In addition to his critical update that Sony has cut PSVR 2 production, he does not share a positive outlook on AR and VR headsets for the near future in his latest Medium article. The MetaQuest Pro only shipped around 300,000 units during its product lifecycle, while Pico, the biggest AR/VR headset company in China, had shipments in 2022 that were more than 40% lower than expected. These figures, he concludes, means that AR/VR headsets like PSVR 2 are not the next star product in consumer electronics in the foreseeable future. He believes Apple is one of the last hopes that this position might change, but he still thinks that the market may overestimate these headsets over the next few years in terms of their overall contribution to companies that supply components for them. So this is a pretty interesting report that we're getting here, this is from a very reliable source when it comes to things like this. They are claiming that Sony has cut their production by 20%. And, the news for PSVR 2 has not been good. And I understand that there are those who point out that these are reports. This is not Sony saying this. You are absolutely correct. But I do think that Sony's silence is very telling. Sony's not even coming out here to refute these articles. They're just letting it happen, and it's overall just not a good look. I still think it's too early to determine whether or not PSVR 2 is going to be a success or a failure, but right now, I have to admit, it's not looking too good. So we are going to move on to the next topic, and this is a very interesting one because it's another report that seems to go against what a lot of the speculation has been regarding the relationship between Sony and Square Enix versus the relationship between Microsoft and Square Enix. It says here, being reported by PlayStation Lifestyle, Sony has long been accused of being the main reason Square Enix games tend to skip Xbox. While it's true that PlayStation often signs timed exclusivity deals with the publisher, a new report, ironically by a Microsoft fan site, suggests that there's more to the story. Exclusivity deals aside, Windows Central Jez Corden claims to have heard that something has gone, quote, functionally wrong, end quote, between Microsoft and Square Enix. Recently, the publisher announced Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster Collection for all platforms but Xbox, and despite Octopath Traveler previously releasing on Xbox Game Pass, its sequel seems to be skipping Microsoft's platforms. Corden didn't elaborate what exactly went wrong between Square Enix and Microsoft, but in response to a comment on Twitter, he suggested that the issue is on Microsoft's side rather than Square Enix. Indeed, Square Enix has enjoyed a healthy relationship with Microsoft in the past. The company famously signed a one-year timed exclusivity deal for Rise of the Tomb Raider, a game from a franchise long associated with PlayStation. We also saw Outriders land on Xbox Game Pass. What changed between the two is anybody's guess. And so yeah, what we're pretty much hearing is that Microsoft did something behind the scenes to make it so that Square Enix is now deciding, you know what, we're not going to be releasing pretty much any future games on your platform. You really have to wonder what happened because, as this article points out, there were plenty of deals between Square Enix and Microsoft in the past, and the relationship seemingly was improving, but now it seems to be the exact opposite. And it's understandable that people would assume that, well, maybe it's because Sony is more involved with Square Enix than ever before, so if these games aren't getting announced for Xbox, it's because Sony is doing something behind the scenes to make it so that it won't, the Xbox version won't be a thing. Seems that that's not true. Sony has signed some exclusivity deals, of course, but not with all of these games. So maybe we'll eventually learn what's going on here and what happened between Microsoft and Square Enix, but thought that this was worth reporting on. Moving on to the final topic of the video, though, I have a report here from WCCF Tech, and it says Final Fantasy 16 would still be in development if not for the PS5's memory and SSD, says the director. So recently it was announced that Final Fantasy 16 has gone gold well ahead of its official launch happening on June 22nd. And this is kind of a big deal because big, massive AAA games like this usually don't go gold this far in advance to its release. And so this is something that the development team has been touching on recently. According to a statement shared by Final Fantasy XVI's director Hiroshi Takai, the reason for this is because of the PS5. He says, quote, if we didn't have the memory that the PlayStation 5 has and also the transfer speed, the SSD, that the PlayStation 5 has, we would still be in development right now, end quote. The article continues by saying we've often seen strong praise for the PS5's architecture. Epic Games founder Tim Sweeney, for example, famously said it was far ahead of PCs in efficiency when it launched. He also praised Sony system architect Mark Cerny for centering the entire architecture around the so-called storage revolution. Many others expressed similar opinions, though we had never heard a game developer explicitly saying that their game development time had been cut because of the PS5's architecture. In the same Play Magazine interview, Final Fantasy XVI producer Naoki Yoshida doubled down on the positive sentiment for Sony's console, adding that the near total lack of loading time Square Enix developers achieved in the game was due to the PS5's architecture. And so this is something that we've been seeing quite a bit from Square Enix, specifically the development team behind Final Fantasy 16. They have really been singing the PlayStation 5's praises. And of course, there is a marketing deal in place. Of course, there is an exclusivity deal in place. But I do think that there certainly is some truth to what's being said here. I think people misinterpret what is being said for, oh, an Xbox version simply couldn't be possible. A PC version simply couldn't be possible. That's not at all what they're saying. In fact, they already did talk about the PC version, saying that they're going to be doing it. It's just that their entire focus on Final Fantasy 16 as it is now and as it will be on June 22nd is just simply a fully optimized PS5 version. What they are basically saying is that during the development of this game, they only had to worry about the PS5 and the PS5 alone, not PC, not any other console, only the PS5 architecture. And so it makes sense that, you know, in being able to just focus in on this single piece of hardware, they're probably feeling like, yeah, there are some benefits here. I think people have forgotten what Mark Cerny's, talk around the PS5 back in 2020, what it was all about. It was about efficiency. It was about making development as easy and streamlined as possible with pretty much zero bottlenecks across the entire development of a game. Now, obviously, when it comes to multi-platform titles, these developers are not going to be able to leverage everything a PS5 offers because there's a lot of different configurations for PC, and you also have to consider that the Xbox architecture is different in some ways compared to the PS5. The PS5 is a custom console, so therefore it will have its advantages when you are just developing for that console and that console alone. And in this case, we are hearing from the development team that one of the advantages is that we were able to get this game done a lot quicker than if we had to worry about other, configurations and other hardware. So yeah, in general, it seems like the development team behind Final Fantasy 16 is genuinely impressed with the PS5, and they are seemingly happy that they were able to get this game done so quickly. So there you go. That's the news I have for you today. Be sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Leave the video a like if you enjoyed it or found it informative. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.